Warren Parker, when he was at Scion, when he was a CEO of Scion, he did this little bit of work, and I just wanted to kind of get over this, but it's the backbone of the country story. Well, we published this paper back here, sort of a national study, but I didn't want to stick to my examples, I'd use other people's. So when Warren did this study here, they just took 2,800 hectares of Central Plateau, and they compared dairy and forestry, just as a simple comparison. And they looked at a whole bunch of land and profit, a whole lot of things. But basically, in the green stuff's all the environmental stuff. But the thing that we're looking at here is the externalities. So on that area of land, 31 million hectares dollars per hectare. Dollars per year. $31 million a year was the externality from forestry. Whoops. And it was minus $18 million for dairy on that same area. So dairy cost the country $18 million in that part of the country. That was at $7 a tonne for carbon dioxide. When you change that to 20, then it comes out to minus $28 million. So dairy's worth minus $28 million, and forestry. And I'm not pushing forestry or anything like that. I'm just giving this as an example of when you make the comparison of the income from it. And then the other thing that we can do is to think about the subsidy that goes to dairy, to stop dairy. So in two places in New Zealand, Lake Taupo and Lake Rotorua, we are paying farmers to stop farming animals on that land to protect those two lakes because of the fisheries or the tourist values of those, I guess. So they're paying them they paid in the Taupo example $90 million, they're paying $40 million to a handful of farmers in the Rotorua catchment to stop them farming. They're paying $400 a kilogram for every kilogram of nitrate that they leach from those farms to not farm in those catchments. So if you work that out at that $400, and here's Environment Canterbury's figures. They figure that 30 million kilograms of nitrate is leached from Canterbury every year. Well, if you work that out, if you paid at the same rate that we're paying Taupo and Rotorua to protect the rivers and the drinking water of Canterbury, that would cost $12 billion. Or, see, to me, I can't see how that's not the same as a subsidy. You're subsidising them to the tune of $12 billion. We're not actually paying the $12 billion because we're just leaving it for our kids to clean up or for the hospitals to clean up when we have cancer. And here's an example of ECAN's way of doing it. They worked out for the Solon, for the Lake Te Waihoro, what it would cost to clean that up. And if they applied those standards to protect that lake, it would be a $300 million loss of revenue, and it was nearly all dairy that they were talking about. And the other way you could do it is you could construct a huge wetland to soak up the nutrients, but that would cost $380 million. What did they decide to do? Neither of them. It's all too expensive. We'll just let them carry on doing it. And it's just for one catchment. That's the sort of money that you're talking about. So that's why we have to have a change. That's why we must change what we're doing. And this is where this draft national policy statement for fresh water, which came from the Science Technical Advisory Group, the Kahui, the 20 freshwater scientists on that, Kahui Waiwari, and the Freshwater Leaders Group, a combination of these groups working together at Ministry for the Environment. I was on the STAG group, year and a half's worth of work, and we came up with this whole bunch of measures here. I've just got them in the background, but I've just summarised them here. Nitrogen, the bottom line, is DIN, dissolved in organic nitrogen, very close to that nitrate number. 1 milligram. So instead of 6.9 milligrams, 1 milligram. Dissolved oxygen, we can, and we're saying you should be continuously measuring it, not just a snapshot once a month, because of those fluctuations that happen in the dissolved oxygen as the processes happen within the river. We're going to have macroinvertebrates, so the bugs, the things that live in the stream, as a measure of the health of it, and a bunch of metrics around that. Ecosystem processes, which is metabolism, which can be got from this. It's just some calculations that you can do, plus some other ways of measuring it. We're going to use native fish, the index of biologic integrity as a measure of the health of rivers as well. Start including some habitat and measuring this deposited sediment, because that's a big problem. And wetlands. You know that we've lost 90% of our wetlands. In the two regions I've been working with in Wellington and Manawatu, 98% of the wetlands have been lost there. It's huge impacts, because it's not just that you've lost all that habitat and all that biodiversity and all that kind of stuff. It's what they did for us. It's the ecosystem services, the soaking up of those nutrients, the carbon sequestration, all of the other stuff that we've lost when we lost them. So that's the old limits up until that, well, they're still in force right now. Here's the proposed limits, where it should have been in the first place, from a scientific point of view. If you want to look at that, this is where you're going to have to start applying this stuff to the reality. So when you hear people say to produce a litre of milk in Canterbury, there's 1,000 litre of fresh water went into it. I've redone those numbers and using these different limits, because when they calculated that, they were using that World Health Organization drinking limit of 11.3 milligrams. In the in the water footprint Bible that is used all around the world, it says ecosystem health is the level you should be looking at. So I'm talking about a kilogram. This is to produce a kilogram of litres per kilogram of nitrogen. So produce a litre of milk. How many litres of water do you need? Sorry, and this is, I haven't got it up. It's actually a kilogram of milk solids. The grey water footprint. How much the grey water, so you've got blue water, green water, that's irrigation water, rainwater is part of your footprint of producing a kilogram of milk solids. But the grey water is how much water does it take to dilute what has been lost on that farm. That's the big part of the water footprint. And if you do that calculation at anywhere near this number that we're talking about for the new limits for the National Policy Statement, you're talking about 59,000 litres of water to produce 1 kilogram of milk solids in Canterbury. That will change all of the justifications we have for using irrigation to produce milk in Canterbury. This is what I see is going to be coming at us. Instead of on the back of the packet of whatever we're going to buy at the moment, you have all these nutrition facts, then we're going to have the planetary facts. And you'll start having things like the water footprint and the nitrogen footprint and the nitrous oxide and the carbon footprint. And then, at least for the rich customers in the world, we'll be able to make this choice here on what goes, what are they going to buy based on the environmental footprint of it. I've had to go through a bunch of watching industry's bullshit excuses that they've come up over time, so what we used to have is limiting nutrients theory. So to grow algae, you need nitrogen and phosphorus, right? And so the theory was that we could just limit phosphorus, and then it wouldn't matter how much nitrogen we had, we wouldn't grow algae. Well, it turns out that it was bullshit. It always was. It was only an industry story. Because our sediments, for a start, our sediments are full of phosphate. So they don't, our algae, you can see in that photo I showed, they grow on the bed. That's the limiting nutrient thing might work in a lake, but in a river, the algae grows on the bed sediment is full of phosphate. So you might have no phosphate in your water sample, but the algae's growing good as gold because it's all in the sediment there. That's why the limiting nutrient story doesn't work. The NPS was the toxicity bullshit story that I've just told you. We keep hearing about managed aquifer recharge, which is otherwise known, not talking about Peter Fraser, but robbing Peter to pay Paul. So, flows that would have come down rivers, we go and stick down supposedly to dilute flows underground. So instead of having the impacts underground, we have the impacts in the surface waters instead, and all the problems that go with it. We had this other little scam called nitrogen surplus as well, which is, again, the industry trying to change things. Hopefully we've shot that one down. So just in closing, and I don't know how well I've explained this, but you can ask me questions if if you didn't get what I was on about. We need to have an honest environmental reporting, and we are not getting that having local government taking the samples and this organisation called LAWA, which is just all the regional councils putting it together and trying to sound like they're independent, but they're not. We need to have an EPA or the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment or someone like that take over freshwater monitoring in New Zealand, so we have some honest reporting about it, so we don't have those kind of lies and scams going on. We obviously have to start measuring meaningful things, and that stupidity of the story of Canterbury and the destruction of freshwater and drinking water in Canterbury being, because it's obviously good for GDP, but it just shows how stupid GDP is a measure when you have all these ongoing impacts forever because we measured the wrong things. We have to match land use to the climate and the environment, not the other way around. We can't just decide we're going to do this here and then make the climate different by irrigation and everything else that we do. We have to reverse that kind of thinking. Organic, biological, regenerative, however, whatever, whole lot of issues around that, but when it's about maximising soil health and a whole lot of things, I think Jono said it really well this morning, a bunch of things. No more synthetic fertiliser, reinstate what is a natural cycle, which is nutrient cycling, where nutrients don't get leached off systems, they stay on the farm. You don't buy stuff in so you can send it down the river or down into the aquifer, it stays within the system. Less harm is not harmless. So, I mean, the world's full of this, oh, we'll just buy an EV and that will make everything better. No, because that has a whole lot of impacts with it as well. You can't just switch in a growth economy from one thing to another and not have more harm done eventually. So we've got to keep thinking about that as well. And I think we have to accept that we are way in overshoot. Climate change is a good example about. And everything that I talked about here are symptoms of that overshoot that we're in. And part of the problem that seems to happen every time is that we silo these issues. So I have the example of greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture or all of the things. And Gluckman or whoever will come and say, we'll just make this GE grass and then we'll be able to reduce methane and it's going to solve everything. Well, but that's only going to fix one thing. Even if it did, even if your magic works, it only fixes one thing. What about the other, all the other impacts of that intensive farming that we have? Whereas reducing stocking rates, looking after the soil, getting into regenerative fixes, you can tick 100 boxes from that change. If you try and pick each one of them individually, or let's fix swimmability, then you'll never get there. We have to start thinking holistically and in systems to be able to make this work. Okay, I'll shut up there, Pete.
Very much, Mike. That was fabulous. What we're going to do now, we will take questions, because we've taken questions specifically for all of the speakers so far this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's actually the very first time I've ever heard you speak, so I had an open mind to everything that you said. Without getting into too much detail, though, around depoliticising water, Elizabeth Sole has mentioned that we need to be setting up a neutral party such as a water commission. Would you be in support of that?
You get the answer you want by who you put on it. I've seen endless examples of that where if the government selects who's on it, I was Pete said it to me the other day. How did you say it, Pete?
In my career in government, I've never ever set up a select committee for any group or commissioned any report that I know what the answer would be before.
So it's a really good idea, but as long as there's independence on who goes on that panel.
Would you say that could also be a lot of the groups that you're a part of as well?
Yeah, But I mean, you look at this. I'm so outnumbered. Of the people who were saying what I was saying 10 years ago, I was 1 out of 100. So you couldn't fill it up with me because there's only one of me. If you talk about people who are trying to protect or making a stand over the intensification that's ruining fresh water in New Zealand, You could put them all in one car in comparison to the industry and all of the money that it has and the government supporting them. There's no way we could overwhelm the commission, unless it was just one commissioner.
Yeah, you've just said that we should be listening to the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment more rather than regional councils. So.
Yeah, but so that's independent. It's a Parliamentary Commission for the Environment. It's Parliament, not a party thing.
Hence what is a Parliamentary Commissioner for Water and being able
Right,
to...
as long as it was independent, yes. Yeah.
Mike, with one of our next land changes coming up that the Right Honourable Mr Jones wants to get going, do you envisage any water issues as in water usage by these trees and or sediment movement?
Yeah,
That's going to pollute our waters.
yeah, look, I'm totally aware. I mean, you only have to walk into a pine forest, walk into a bush, native bush, and feel the moisture and see the litter and, well, healthy, but walk into a pine forest and it's dry. And I've seen pine in multiple places where the water table is drawn down, like the dunes up where I work. Dune lakes disappear as the pine trees grow, chop them down, the dune lakes come back again, They're negative for water, they cause all sorts of issues. If he has his way and we put in massive pine plantations, then we're in big trouble. For so many reasons.
I'm Mike Walter again from Australia. Thank you very much for your valiant efforts. We've got the same situation in sugar in Queensland, Great Barrier Reef.
Yeah.
But rather than fighting the brick wall, these stupid bureaucratic hurdles, when is the dairy industry and Mike going to get together to say, look, instead of 257% natural nitrogen use in the Canterbury Plains, we can get that back down to under 100 or 100, more profitably, more practically, and here are the actual regenerative strategies that put that into play. And we can do that within a month, workshopping that, and then there's a strategy that we can advocate and advance rather than just continually this bruising fight.
Yeah, totally agree. And I'd be there, boots and all, trying to support that, yeah.
While you were talking the last few minutes, I was looking up our water testing from our local well, which is just outside Lincoln, because that test came back and said that everything's fine. We've got 5.1 grams per quarter meter.
Yeah, cubic
Is
meter.
that the same then as?
Yeah, that'll be the same as 5 milligrams per litre. Yeah.
So how fucked are we? Should we be buying bottled water?
Okay, so 2.1. That's
5.1.
yeah. So you're double the 15%. So the studies say it looks like when you get to 2.1, it's 15% increase in risk. For every milligram after that, it's a 4% increased risk. So what's that? 3/4 of, yeah. You're looking at a 20-something% increase in the risk of getting colorectal cancer based on the numbers that we have if you were drinking that water. But then you say, let's buy bottled water, and then you highlight this other huge issue where corporates, CocaCola and L, can get the best. They don't want that water that you have to drink, that we have to drink. They want the stuff from the deepest bores, like at Pastoral. They get it for zilch. They get it for nothing. Put it into plastic bottles and sell it to us.
Send it to China.
Well, see, wherever it goes, like a lot of it gets sold here. So that's the other issue, and then we might want to talk about that later. But the nobody owns water bullshit means that we don't charge for water because nobody supposedly owns it, even though we know full well that it is traded all of the time. So, yeah, I mean, I can understand if I was getting that drinking water, I would go buy some other water, personally.
Is there another way of getting rid of the night?
No, we look at the numbers that I've got from reverse osmosis. You might get that 5 down to 4 or something with reverse osmosis, but there's really nothing else that easily or cheaply can do it. Except catch rainwater is another really cheap, cheap, expensive in the first place, but cheap in the long run way.
Going on what Walter was saying there before, how strategically can we get this industry to be working with you to be able to accelerate change?
Look, I can't strategically do anything. I can support I think if it came from you guys, if there was a proposal come out of this conference that we're going to make it happen, then I'll be there. I'll be there doing everything I can to support it, but I can't make it happen. It's not my job at all.
A thing that keeps coming back is that there are a lot of farmers out there in the conventional space who would like to transition to regenerative or to organic dairying, but they can't do it without some kind of incentive or a premium, which begs the question, at least in the Canterbury area, of where's the outlet for this better quality milk? Where's the outlet for the organic milk? Stuart, can you, Luxon, if you're still here, can you address this question of where is Fonterra and all of that, and where are we going to come up with the premium to incentivize farmers to stop their use of nitrogen and pesticides?
Okay, so we have an organic program that's based on North Island, and it's purely there because of infrastructure, and so that's size and product flexibility that the South Island does not have. In regards to your other question around incentivising lower use of nitrogen, I think the industry as a whole has to come together to do that.
How?
Yeah, but the other side of it is if the government has the bottle to bring in those nitrate limits, how the scientists have told them they need to be, then if you can farm without nitrate leaching and not using synthetic fertiliser, you're going to have a massive advantage for a start. So it'll go both ways.
Where's the legislation got to that you've...
Oh, so it's with the minister at the moment. So he said he's going to make his mind up, I think, within the next 2 months. Before the election, he's going to announce it. But I do know he's under huge pressure from New Zealand First not to do it. So what comes out of it, I don't know.
Kia ora, Mike. Look, hey, thank you.
Hey, Mike.
How are you? I just want to acknowledge you for the stand that you take for our fresh water and our whenua, and the kind of the target that you put on your head and taking this issue forward and fighting it on every front. That's a lonely road, I know, that you have chosen to take, but it's a critically important one, and one of the most important pathways probably in our lifetime, because it relates, as Walter showed us yesterday, to so many issues around the degradation and destruction we've caused. We've disrupted our hydrological system, but how that flows all the way through to the health stuff that we saw just a wee while ago. This is not a plug, it's more a call to action and a cry for help. We recognised a couple of years ago the inaction that comes out of from a political and policy and bureaucratic level, and also at a big industry level, for a whole lot of reasons. The machinery and the wheels of those machines just too hard to pivot into something that needs to solve these problems. So we set about looking for ways of finding what an investment platform could look like, where we can bring independent investment outside of industry and outside of government to support frontline heroes like the scientists like Mike, like the farmers that are in the room today that are driving the change, have to get up early every day and fight the good fight. And when they turn around, there's no one standing behind them. So last week we rolled out a venture called Calm the Farm, and that's designed to try and find the investors that are prepared to back you guys to do your jobs, and the recognition that no one else is going to come to your help. And so I just want to put it out there, check out the site. It's really early days, we're 3 days in. We've already had a whole bunch of farmers come onto the site and register interest. How can they get help? We need to put pressure on that demand side so we can then take that to the investor side and say, can we get low or no interest loans into these guys, because they might need 100k, whatever it is, to get through those first couple of years. We know there's advice and just phenomenal advisors in the room who are providing outstanding advice and can prove that no nitrogen is a better business model than putting nitrogen on. But how do we support you guys as well to support your farmers and your clients? So we don't have to keep asking and begging industry to do something different and give us the premium. So we don't have to just rely on Mike to put his target on his head every day and stand up and talk to the converted. Because when he goes and talks to other rooms of unconverted, right, he's got to check under his car before he leaves those converted. So, bro, thank you again, acknowledge that, and just wanted to put that out there to the heroes that are in the room and out there. If you want to try and crack this, let's try and do it without government and without without the big industry players. They'll come on board eventually.
Thanks a lot, and you're a great inspiration to many academics as well. I just wanted to put the urea thing right on the nail here. Have you got any idea, even for Canterbury, if we stopped using urea, right? If we just said, right, that's it, we're not going to use it. Have you any idea how long it would take to make an impact in terms of those aquifers, rivers, or anything like that?
I think it's really, really quick. Because you can see how quickly it went through, you know, with my little animation showing that intensification and how quickly those aquifers came up. And then, of course, it'll depend on the volume of the aquifer and that kind of thing as well. But I think that Canterbury's a really good example of where it went wrong, but it could be a really, really good place to turn it around. Much, much quicker than, you know, like trying to turn the lake around will be hard, you know, or Lake Portofino or a whole other parts of New Zealand that I've been working in that are slower for the nitrate to make its way through. I think Canterbury could be the one where it could happen really quickly.
I'd like to make a comment. Phyllis mentioned we might need a premium to get better results, but I use the same type of methods that Hamish is using now, regenerative grazing on a dairy farm in the northeast US. I was regenerative from 2008 to 2016, and the farm is still regenerative. It's ticking a lot of boxes. It's become not only a carbon sponge, but it's filtering our water. We were sequestering carbon. Our organic matter increased from 2006 to the present at 0.5% per year. So it's ticking a lot of boxes, but I don't think you need a premium. And I think to give up the urea, you have to replace it with something. What Hamish is doing is jump-starting that nitrogen cycle, and that is the replacement. You can't just tell farmers to quit using the nitrogen because they'll go out of business. So I think just by continuing the process of learning and teaching each other this regenerative grazing, it's going to work not only in sheep and beef, but I showed myself on my farm that it works in a dairy context as well.
Mike, we set up New Zealand's first large predator-proof reserve, and there's now lots and lots of them around New Zealand. There are great things happening with the people in this room, and it's catching on, it's spreading. Good ideas have currency. I'm also a property rights nut, and I believe the way that you deal with things like pollution is to internalise your externalities. So none of my neighbours chucks their rubbish over our fence onto our property. But because our rivers and our oceans are unowned, we just chuck it out and it goes down. Now, we've also got kelp. I've got kelp quota. I funded New Zealand's largest ever kelp research project. I'm in the process, through my lawyers, for suing land farmers and forestry people for polluting through sedimentation our kelp beds. So that is an actual example. I've won 2 High Court battles, and I've also funded a land-based treatment system in Akaroa Harbour. Akaroa Harbour is working towards all treatment systems of human effluent being treated on land as a consequence of my funding that land-based treatment. I think what we need to do is celebrate people who step outside like you do, like people who do things in a practical sense. I mean, I have quite a bit of faith that things don't happen until the 11th hour, and then we get a rush on.
We're certainly at the 11th hour.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So,
totally agree with you.
I have a fear that if we rely too much on government, it becomes too rule-bound. Whereas one of the strengths of this organisation or this grouping of people is we're doing it despite the rules and regulations. And, you know, people like Jono and others, their infectious enthusiasm is so contagious. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.